welcome to our virtual tasting this afternoon. I'm delighted to be joined by Amanda Barnes, MW again, who's going to be hosting for us. And I'm very pleased to say two of good French friends of mine and fantastic winemakers here as well. Thibault Lepoutre from Hacienda Araucano and Benoit Fitte from Viña Requingua. And hopefully you've all got your tasting packs and you're raring to go. It's very, very interesting selection of wines today. And I really, really hope, because they're very interesting, that we're going to get lots of good Q&A, some really good questions coming as well. We can't see you, we can't hear you, but you can ask questions. So please do type any questions you've got about the wines that we're tasting today. And our two winemakers here, Thibault first, and then Benoit, when he presents his three wines, we'll have a chance to answer those for you. But it's not about me. And by the way, no, I'm not in Chile. We couldn't run to that expense, but this is literally just a picture. But there we are, very appropriate for the day. Anyway, I'll stop waffling and I'll hand over to Amanda and Thibault to kick off. Fantastic, guys. Go ahead. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. I don't think Chile looks like that right now at this time of year. In fact, it's been very cold. But
yeah. Stop picking holes. Stop picking holes.
I'm actually in Germany today, and it's a beautiful, warm, sunny day. So I'm really excited to kick off with some white wine. But Thibault, before we started, the topic of today is two Frenchmen in Chile. So I wanted to ask, how did you end up in South America? So you actually live in Argentina, but obviously you work a lot in Chile. What brought you to South America? What enticed you there?
I went to South America first for studies. I did an exchange with my university for 6 months, almost 20 years ago now, a little bit less than that. And I started working for François Lurton, the wine grower from Bordeaux in Portugal for 1 year and a half. And then he sold Portugal. He sold his estate in Portugal and offered me to work for him in Argentina. So I left Portugal to Argentina in 2012. I've been in charge of the winery of Argentina for several years, and since 7-8 years now, he offered me to get in charge of the Chilean winery, which is not very far from Argentina. We have it's a trip of 3 to 4 hours between car, plane, and car. So I go to Chile 3 times per month when I'm in South America, and that's how I ended in South America through François Lurton, the owner of the winery.
Excellent. I think actually the most times I've seen you, Thibault, is on a plane together.
Yeah,
we always run into each other. You're always hopping over the Andes. And tell us, because we're going to be tasting 3 beautiful wines from Lolol. So can you give us a bit of a snapshot of the terroir? Because it's very different to the rest of Colchagua, really.
Yes, Lolol, it's part of the Colchagua appellation, but Colchagua is usually regarded as a quite warm appellation, where you have some excellent, maybe the best Carmener from Chile, or at least the best rated Carmener from Chile. But this is a central part of Colchagua, or the eastern part of Colchagua. Lolol is, that's the reason why François chose this place, is on the western part of Colchagua, means that it's closer to the Pacific Ocean. So we have a stronger influence of the ocean. We have a cooler weather, and that's why the brand of our wines is Humo Blanco, which means white smog, because every day till 12 we have these clouds above the estate that protects our grapes from the very bright and strong light from South America, and it allows us to grow some late grape like Carmener, but also some very early grape like Sauvignon Blanc that you are going to have now. And we also have some Pinot Noir and some fresh style of Syrah that you are going to taste afterwards. So the Sauvignon Blanc that we'll have is not a very typical coastal style of Sauvignon Blanc. I don't know if you are used to the Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, but usually they are very aromatic, with a very strong and expressive nose. We try not to enhance this aromatic expression and work more on the palate. We don't have the expression of the Sauvignon Blanc, which are straight on the coast, because we are not straight on the coast. We are a little bit more in the land. even if we are not on the east. And we want to make a different Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, or at least different from some people can expect from the Sauvignon from Chile. A more elegant and delicate style, working more on the aging with the palate.
It is very textural in the palate. You know, like I love there's a slight richness, although it's a very kind of acid-driven wine. But are you doing lees work, or what are you doing to kind of build that texture in the palate?
Yes, we do a lot of work with the lees. When wine finishes, we have some of the wine which is aged in amphoras, and the other part in iron steel tanks. But the biggest challenge with this wine, which is Demeter certified, is fermentation. You know, when you are Demeter certified, you are not allowed to use any selected yeast, which for the red wine is not an issue, because the red wine can ferment quite easily without any selected yeast. But for the white grapes, because the white grapes does not ferment with the skins, it ferments at the juice without solid parts. It's much more difficult to have a clean fermentation, that never stops. What we do, we harvest some white grapes 1 week before the proper date of harvesting. We make a pied de cuve, like a starter, and then we put this pied de cuve inside the must when we harvest the grape. And this native yeast also participate to the specificity, the texture, or the expression of this wine. It's not only a straight Sauvignon, it's a Sauvignon Blanc, but with a kind of personality which is, I would say, very linked to the yeast that fermented this must.
Absolutely. I've actually been a fan of Humo Blanco for many years, and it's one of those wines that, with a good friend of mine, we hold back vintages and taste older vintages. I think it's a Sauvignon Blanc that ages beautifully. You've more recently moved to screw cap, haven't you? Because previously I think it was under cork.
Humo Blanco, for the whites, it's a long time. It's with the screw cap. François is a pioneer, the owner of the winery.
Ah, okay.
And even in Argentina, you know, our great white wine, the Grand Lurton Blanc, we have some old vintages, 2009, 10, and 11, which are corked, which are closed with screw cap. Then we went back to the cork. But this Humo Blanco Sauvignon Blanc, I think it's a long time since in screw cap.
Excellent. And how do you see the kind of ageability or age-worthiness of this wine?
For this one, especially for the screw cap in general, or for this one? For this wine,
No, for this wine.
It's obviously you will have an evolution with of the expression of the Sauvignon Blanc, but as we don't try to enhance the expression and work more on the mouth and the balance of the wine, it's a wine which is not going to get tired very early. You know, all the very expressive grapes like Torontes, like Sauvignon Blanc, they get when they get old, they're not very. They sometimes get a bit boring. But in this case of this Sauvignon Blanc, which is vinificated and aged in order to make a more complex wine, we have a very interesting wine. Obviously, the expression of the Sauvignon Blanc is going to be quite different. We won't have this all these lime notes, all this the grapefruit, but you will have some very interesting notes anyway.
There's already a lovely kind of oiliness, actually, I think, to the texture, and a really, really kind of beautiful flinty note as well, which I really like in this more kind of youthful vintage. But I think it's a wine that I'd really love to kind of keep a few bottles back and see what happens. Rachel has a question. So she asks, you know, what would be the best food pairing for this excellent Sauvignon Blanc?
Well, Chile is a country which has an interesting gastronomy, which is very influenced by Peru. And I think there is one dish which is fantastic for me that I discovered when I moved to South America, which is ceviche. And I'm sure in Great Britain you have some excellent white fish, and make a ceviche with white fish. For me, it would be an excellent pairing with this wine.
Yeah, I also love the tiradito, which is the kind of, you know, the raw fish, like with less of that kind of citrus influence, a little bit more of the kind of fattiness of the fish comes through, which I think would be beautiful with this as well. I'd love to hear if anyone else tasting along with us has some favorite pairings to throw into the ring. That would be very welcome too. And I wanted, before we move on to the Syrah, as a Frenchman, I wanted to ask you a little bit of your perspective of Chilean Sauvignon Blanc, because a lot of the times when we're studying for wine exams, you know, like when I was studying for the MW, a lot of people were asking me, and the WSET as well, what is the profile of Chilean Sauvignon Blanc? Where does it sit in the kind of world? You know, we have obviously the kind of famous styles from Bordeaux, from the Loire, New Zealand's very kind of very aromatic styles. Where do you see Chilean Sauvignon Blanc fitting?
Chile, if you take all the famous appellations of Sauvignon Blanc, like obviously Casablanca, San Antonio, Lleida, now you have Sapaya, you have a lot of new appellations which are always very close to the coast and a little bit more on the north than where we are. So it means it's a warmer place, but very on the coast. This profile of Sauvignon Blanc, it's a very, very aromatic. It's a very strong nose, sometimes a bit too green for my taste, a bit too like asparagus. I have some. I'm afraid this kind of style of Sauvignon Blanc is going to get the people tired because it's too monolithic. And I think the Sauvignon Blanc from Chile now, Benoit might have another opinion about that, but should move to a more French style, like not that aromatic, but more built in the mouth, in the volume, on the palate, to move to a Sancerre style. And in Chile, we have a lot of aromatic expression. Instead of keeping this aromatic expression, maybe we can have a more oxidative vinification that will give more volume to the wine and a more complex expression. But that's where I think the wine, at least that's where we are moving with our wines, with the Humo Blanco.
Excellent. I think it definitely reflects that, you know, journey towards more kind of textural gastronomy focused Sauvignon Blanc. I think it's really delicious. Mark says that it's an elegant, more restrained style of Sauvignon Blanc, and I certainly agree. All right, shall we move on to your Syrah-Viognier, so your kind of Rhone in Chile? Do you want to tell us a little bit about this, and perhaps can you explain also what L'Atelier means when you put it on the label?
Yeah, L'Atelier, it's a range that we started now 5 years ago. It's a range where we do some special vinification. We make a pet nat, we do an orange wine, and we did no sulfite added Carmenère that Condor has too. And we did the Syrah-Viognier, I think, 3 years ago. We have a lot of Syrah, and the Syrah that we have is planted like in Côte-Rôtie, like in the Rhône, with échalas. The slope is very straight, is very high. We cannot make a row. We have to put the vines one by one and put one post on each vine. It's called échalas. That's how the vines are planted in the Rhône. But the Syrah, it's a very interesting grapes. But if it's not from France or from Australia, maybe it's very difficult to give it specificity, to explain it and to sell it abroad. So what we found with this grape is that to blend it with Viognier, because we also have some Viognier on the same slope, planted with the same way with échalas, and we decided to make a co-fermentation of Syrah and Viognier, which is absolutely not new. It's a very ancestral method from Côte-Rôtie. In Côte-Rôtie, what they did, the Syrah would not always ripe very well. So they would put some Viognier inside the Syrah to get a little bit more of alcohol and volume when the Syrah was a little bit underripe, which is not our case at all. Because the Viognier, when it's very ripe, you ferment it with the stems, and so you will give a lot of tannins to the wine with the stems of the Viognier. In our case, we don't put the stems inside the vats. So we destem the Viognier and we destem the Syrah, and we put all these grapes together for the fermentation. The idea is to give more elegance to the wine and give a hint of floral expression on the nose, because Syrah, it's a red grape, which has some floral expression too. Usually Syrah is associated with damascenone, betaionone, which are aromatical compounds that express rose, violet, stuff like that. Also with pepper, but you usually associate Syrah with floral expression like violet and rose. And the Viognier, it's a very floral grape. So we try to enhance the floral expression of the Syrah with some very floral white grape like Viognier.
It's delicious. I love the floral notes as you describe, and there's a lovely kind of juicy character to the palate. Really, a kind of a wonderful summer wine. Actually, it's going down really nicely in this summer evening here. I know it's probably not quite. Well, are you in France there, Thibault, or are you in Argentina?
I'm in France. Yeah, I'm in France.
Oh, okay, all right. So you're in summer as well. It's delicious. And what percentage of Viognier do you add or co-ferment?
10%.
Yeah. Oh, okay, quite significant then.
Yeah, right.
Excellent. Perfect. It's really juicy. It's very delicious. I think that's going to be wonderful with a barbecue. Tracy has a question about biodynamic certification and what extra challenges that brings you as a winemaker. So you mentioned obviously the yeasts in the case of white wine. Is there anything else in terms of winemaking in biodynamics that is more challenging?
No, the main issue are the yeasts, especially for the whites. Then we are not allowed to use as much sulfite than organic, and even less than conventional wines. But for the wine like the Sauvignon Blanc or the Syrah-Viognier, which is bottled quite early, usually the Syrah, we bottle it in October. So we just spend the winter in the cellar, and when the temperature gets warmer, we bottle it. So there is no issue. But for the next wine we're going to taste, the Clos, which is a wine which is aged between 12 to 15 months, keep this wine on aging for such a long time without any, with a very low level of sulfites is a challenge. Because you have to be very clean in the winery, make sure that all the bacteria or the wild yeast will not start to work. So that would be the second challenge. It's for the aged wine with the low level of sulfite, like the Clos.
Okay, fantastic. Well, now you've mentioned the Clos, do you want to take us through? But first, maybe you could explain the label a bit, which is really right. Actually, I would quite like you to explain both the labels, because here you've got the kind of sun, moon, beams. Tell us about the Humo Blanco label, what that kind of all signifies.
The label of Humo Blanco is it's quite new. I think the third vintage we do with this label is to illustrate the biodynamic farming with the moon, which is a very central compound in our farming. We work mainly with the pruning, but also with the harvest, and in other some operation we work with the calendar of Mariatoun, which is based on the stars and the moon. We try to follow the calendar of Mariatoun as much as we can, but the moon we follow almost 100%. It's easier to follow the moon than the calendar of Mariatoun. But this is a picture of the estate.
What is Mariatoun?
Mariatoun, it's I don't know exactly the life of Mariatoun, but it's a woman who's dead, but she has been a very significant actor in the development of the biodynamic in the 20th century, and she gives some concept in order to put a calendar with all the operation that you have to do in the vineyard, and this calendar is is actualized every year by our assessor in the biodynamic, and every day we know you have some day where we can work on the soil, other day what is better not to touch the plants. And we have this calendar, a new calendar every year, and we try to follow it. It's one of the most difficult part in the biodynamic farming, because it's when you're very small, if you are 5 hectares, it's easy to follow this calendar. But we are not big. We are only 26 hectares, but it's still big in order to make all the preparation the day that Mariatoun decided that it was the right day to do it.
A lot of extra work. All right, so tell us about Clos and about this label.
Clos is It's actually the most important wine of our winery. That's the reason why François did these estates. We have a French concept of winery where we have all the grapes in the same place, but different grapes. So we try to blend different grapes in order to get some complexity to make a wine which is a reflect of the place. Because in the New World, and François Benoit should know it, he knows it, I'm sure. In the New World, some people will blend some origins. You can, for example, in Argentina, it's very common to blend some Malbec from other different places inside the Uco Valley. But we don't do it in Argentina, and we don't do it neither in Chile. We have 7 red grapes in our estates, and we blend this 6 of these grapes inside this clos. The main compounds of this blend is Carmenère, Syrah, and Cabernet Sauvignon, but you also have some Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Cab Franc.
Perfect.
So we have our estate is on the hills, so you have lower parts which is planted on richer soils, and on the slopes you have some more demanding soils, demanding plots. Usually the Cabernet Sauvignon deserves a richer soil. So the best Cabernet Sauvignon that we have are planted in the bottom of our estates, in the richer part of the estates, which is also the latest part. The Cabernet Sauvignon and Cab Sauv are planted on the bottom. The Syrah, in order to get more freshness, we plant it at a higher altitude, which is not very high, but it's still higher, and on some very demanding soils, very poor soils. The Syrah is planting there. The Malbec and the Petit Verdot too, nearby the Syrah. And the Carmenère, we found that it prefers an average soil. I mean, it's not the richer soil, but it's not the poorest. It needs to have some slopes and quite warm orientation. Otherwise, the maturation will be difficult. But if we put it as high at the Syrah, for example, the maturity will be harder to get. So the Carmenère is on the average part of the estates. The Cabernet Sauvignon and Cab Franc on the richer part, on the lower part, and the higher part we have the Syrah and the very small plots of Malbec and Petit Verdot that we have.
Excellent, fabulous. And a question here from Rachel, what does CLO actually stand for?
Clos, alors, Clos, it's a closed place. The former name of this wine was Clos de Lolol, like a Clos Vougeot, like a Clos in France. But in 2015, there was a new regulation in Chile that we could not use a name of Clos. Well, we have to remove the name Clos because it was Clos de Lolol from the label. So we have to find a trick to use this name of Clos because it's our brand, and everybody knows this wine as Clos de Lolol. And we patented the name CLO, which is Corte Lurton Organico, or Corte Lolol Organico, depending on the... And that's why we call it CLO, Clos de Lolol. But it's the original name of this wine was Clos, CLOS, like in French, de Lolol.
Excellent. I love that that as a group between Chile and Argentina, you've had to change your names from the Tokay in Argentina to Jacot. And I have a question kind of leading on to that, because you're obviously yourself a Frenchman, Francois, a Frenchman who've lived and grown up with all the kind of strict regulations of working in France. Apart from the naming, where you don't have this freedom, do you find greater freedoms making wines in Chile and Argentina compared to France?
Absolutely, right. Well, I think in France, if you go to some not that prestigious appellation, like in the south of France, you have quite some freedom to make almost anything you want, because the appellations are not very. And if you work in Vin de France or in Vin de Pays, you can do anything you want. But that's true that in Chile, you can talk about an appellation like Lolol or Colchagua, and inside Colchagua, you have no restriction apart the fact that the grapes have to come from Colchagua. But you can make if you want to make let's say a Pinot Meunier from Colchagua, you can do it, or a Riesling from Colchagua. There is no orange wine of Riesling from Colchagua. It will be orange. That's a very And there is no restriction on how you want to make it. The vinification methods are not restricted at all. The way you want to farm it, that's true. That I think nowadays it's a strength of South America towards Europe. This liberty of this freedom of winemaking.
Absolutely. On the question about the blend here, so Mark wants to know, he says, do you just use Malbec and Petit Verdot in your blends? This one's obviously blend of Carmenere, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah as well. But I think where his question is more related to whether the Malbec is Cot, like you have in Argentina, or is it Malbec in this blend? And perhaps for those who haven't heard your wonderful talk on Malbec and Cot, perhaps you can just explain the difference quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's Cot, because in Chile you didn't have a lot of Malbec at that time. So when François planted it, he bought some French clones, which is Cot. And the difference of Cot and Malbec, well, the Cot is a selection which has been done in France after the Phylloxera. So it's a more productive clone of Malbec. It's more, it has a more consistent yield in the time. It's usually regarded as more productive and more austere version of the Malbec, but it also brings more acidity and more freshness to the blend. In Argentina, we always put 20 to 30% of Cot in our Malbec. And the Malbec is a genuine Malbec from France, which has been sent to South America almost 2 centuries ago now, at the middle of the 19th century. It's a genuine Malbec. With no clonal selection. It has been a massal selection from decades. And when French people or European people came to South America in the 90s, they discovered that there was a fantastic Malbec in Argentina, which was very different from what they had in France, in Cahors and Loire Valley.
Excellent, fabulous. I have a question from Fabien. He says, bonjour, Thibault. And could you please spell the name of the biodynamic mentor you took inspiration from? I think. Fabien, were you referring to the calendar, perhaps?
The Mariatoun. But well, if you want to know about biodynamic, you have to read some books of Rudolf Steiner. Is the father of the biodynamic. He wrote some stuff about almost everything, education, physics, but the only thing that remains from all his work is biodynamic, biodynamic education, I would say. And he also built a philosophy, anthroposophy, kind of philosophy which is built around the human, and without God. So it's I think if you want to read something about the biodynamic, you should read about Rudolf Steiner. Mariatoun is more practical tool that she built afterwards. But a French guy famous now in biodynamic is Masson. Masson is a French guy which is now well known. You have Joly in a Sauvignier. Which is not a theoretician. He has an estate of Chenin in Sauvignier, and he also wrote a lot of books about the biodynamic. That would be the people you should read if you want to know more about, I think, about the biodynamic.
Super. And just to check, Fabien just wants to check, it is Maria Tun. Can I say that in that way? Yeah, T-U-N. Okay, great. Perfect. That is correct. Before, I know that we need to bring Benoit on now because we're at our halfway point. I just want to talk about this delicious wine, the Clos, which is absolutely gorgeous. This lovely kind of spicy blend, lovely kind of rich red fruits, but such freshness as well, like a really nicely, smartly put together vintage. And I'm tasting the 2020. Can you tell us a little bit about the vintage 2020?
2020, it was, well, no, 2020, it was
pandemic vintage.
2020, it was well, quite a warm vintage, but not that. I would say Benoit maybe has some more fresh memories about this vintage, but I don't have a specific. I remember very well 17, which was my first vintage there. 2020, we use the Syrah like every year to give more freshness and tension to the blend. We use the Carmenère like every year to give more tannicity, like more structure in the blend, and all the sweet part of the soft tannins come from the old Cabernet and Cabernet Franc that we have. That's how the blend is built almost every year.
Beautiful. Well, I'd like to welcome Benoit to join us, and thank you, Thibault, because it's a treat for me to taste your wines from Chile, and see such a lovely kind of smart portfolio with such beautiful drinkability, but also really kind of focusing on that kind of texture and brightness in the mouth. I think they show really nicely, especially with a nice warm summery evening here in Europe. And Benoit, you're joining us. You are in Chile. You are in the cold, aren't you?
Hi, Amanda. Yes, I'm in Chile. I'm the only guy in the winter now, in the cool weather.
How's it been? You've had a lot of snow as well in the Andes. How's the last couple of weeks been?
No, we had some frozen, but not enough snow yet. I mean, we need more rain now. We had a few rains during May, some begin June, but not enough for the next season.
All right. Well, fingers crossed you'll get some nice heavy kind of dumps of snow and good for the skiing as well as the vines. Can you tell me, before we start tasting your wines, you've been in Chile for quite a while. Can you tell me a little bit about what originally brought you there, what attracted you to work in Chile, and why you enjoy living there as a vigneron?
Look, I'm a lucky guy. I was working for Chateau Montus between 1997 and 1999. In 1999, I went to make 3 months experience in Chile, and has been my longest 3 months in my life. I'm still living there. But
I hope you're getting paid more than an intern wage.
Yeah, successive opportunities. And finally, in 2001, Achura family, the owner family of Viña Requingua, contract me for the new project, bottle project. So we began together with a very low knowledge, the bottle business, and 20, almost 25 years after, we're still working together. Simply.
Amazing. Wonderful. And tell us a bit about the kind of winery, the areas in which you work. Give me the kind of landscape that Requingua kind of encompasses.
Look, at the beginning, it was a very small winery. We were a boutique winery. I mean, because we start with only the first bottle, so we was very small. And after 10 years, we began to grow. But before to grow, we developed different vineyards in different regions, because the key point here is the grape. It's not the winemaker, it's not the winery, it's not the way how we are making the wine. Finally, the most important is the origin of the grapes. So during the first 10 years, we were focused in developing different vineyards, because at the beginning, we were only in where we have the winery, in Sagrada Familia place. So to situate the winery, we are 200 kilometers south of Santiago. So nearby Curico City, 18 kilometers southwest of Curico City, near the coastal mountains. So the first 10 years, we developed almost 12 different vineyards in 7 different valleys, from Casablanca to Itata Valley. And today we're still working with those 13 different vineyards, 13 different origins. We work traditionally, so that means we try to keep the quality or better to say the singularity of the grapes till the bottle by simple processes. I mean simple processes, I mean not traditional processing, I mean not modern processing like micro-ox or thermovinification. We are doing the wine like my grandfather winemaking it in Armagnac, because I'm original from Armagnac. So really simply, we can do nothing more than that. Bottling soils and climate from Chile.
Amazing, beautiful. And actually, so what we're tasting today is 100%. Oh no, my bottle says, my text sheet said everything from Maule.
No,
Is everything from
it's not,
Maule
it's not
today?
correct.
No, the second wine.
No.
Okay, the second wine, because the bottle of the Petit Verdot says Curico. The Chardonnay is coming from Maule, and then we're finishing in Curico as well. Okay, all right then. So we're starting
Right.
in Maule, and tell me a bit about why you're sourcing the Chardonnay from Maule, because it's not the most obvious choice for Chardonnay from Chile to come from Maule. Why have you selected Maule grapes for this Chardonnay?
Amanda, it's very interesting because Thibault was talking about the Sauvignon Blanc and the characteristic of the Chilean Sauvignon Blanc. And 20 years ago, I'm in line with Thibault. I think the Sauvignon Blanc of Chile are lack of typicity. When I talk about typicity, I'm talking about mouth, because of course when you smell a Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, you smell a lot of thiols, very impressive in term of flavors, fresh flavors, but finally in mouth generally is lack of length, is lack of complexity, is lack of texture. So finally in 2004, we planted this vineyard, only white wines in Araucano. So it's nearby the Andes mountains. We are in direct line 14 kilometers from the footstep of the Andes mountain. Volcanic soils, that's very important. That's very important because they are permeable soils, so we can keep natural acidity, freshness, and so that makes our wines more mineral. When we talk about minerality, we are talking about juiciness in mouth, and so we develop this vineyard with different type of vineyard, type of trellis system. And this Chardonnay, we planted in pergola. Pergola,
Okay.
1,600 plants per hectare. And we do two types of wine with the same vineyard. Our sparkling with the same Chardonnay, of course, harvesting in advance. And then our Grand Reserve Chardonnay. This Grand Reserve is in this case, we took the inspiration in California, especially in Sonoma, trying to get a textured Chardonnay, very intense at the nose, of course, fermented in barrel. We ferment it in old American barrel. When we are talking about old barrel, we are talking plus 4 years old. So we are fermenting in barrel between 4 and 10 years old, only American. We don't do many interventions. We are pressing directly the Chardonnay. The bunches arrive to the winery, direct to the press. We collect. We do a slight cleaning of the must. So we ferment with high turbidity. I told between 200 and 250 NTU. And then we ferment in barrel, around 18 to 20 Celsius degrees. And we keep on the same lees the wine for 10 months more in the same barrel. No racking. We are not cleaning the wine. We keep it on the same lees of the fermentation. And finally, we bottle it after more or less 1 year after receiving the grapes to the winery.
There's a lovely silkiness to the texture, and shows a bit more of that kind of richness and lovely kind of ripeness of fruit, but that kind of minerality that you talk about, that volcanic edge really kind of comes through as well on a savory kind of undertone to it. Tell me a bit more about the pergola, because it feels like a lot of winemakers in South America are beginning to talk more about the potential of actually going back to the pergola system and giving more shade and sun cover to your bunches. Why did you choose to plant in pergola for Chardonnay?
Look, I'm in love with this trellis system. I think is the best system to avoid or to regulate the climate. I mean, of course, we are in South America, we are in Chile, we are in Maule Valley. In that case, we are close to the Andes Mountain, but our climate still warm. I mean, we are in if we classify the climate is temperate, cool climate. It's not cool climate. It's temperate. So finally, we get a warm summer, generally from the end of springtime, and during all summertime, we still have high temperature. So with pergola system, trellis system, we get lower average temperature, definitely, because of course we have the rooftop with all the leaves, and that makes a different mesoclimate, really cooler than, for example, a vertical trellis system. So it's why we decided to use this trellis system. Of course, at the beginning, we were thinking only in the sparkling wine, so looking for maturity, but at the same time, lower alcohol, low sugar content, and high acidity. So to arrive more or less to the same parameters than champagne, 10, so 10 alcohol degrees, and 10 total acidity in sulfuric. So at the beginning, that was the idea. But after few years, we found the perfect maturity to make still wine too.
Excellent. Lovely. And Rachel.
Look, Amanda, sorry, but today we'll try not only one wine from pergola. So last wine, the Potro de Piedra, is coming also from pergola.
Excellent. Woohoo! Look forward to that in a second. Rachel just wants to share that she loves the balance of this kind of richness of the caramel and also those citrus flavors coming through. A lovely, really lovely example of Chardonnay from Maule. So let's move on to your reds then. So here we've got, next we're going to be tasting the Petit Verdot Cabernet Sauvignon, which is obviously, Petit Verdot in France is normally just used as a very minor blending grape. Tell us about the kind of climate here in Curicó, which enables you to fully ripen Petit Verdot, and what, the character of Petit Verdot as a grape variety coming into this blend.
Yeah, we get in love with a viticulturalist. In that time, it was a Mémoiture. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2017. But together we decided to make many tries. The first decade between 2000 and 2010, and when I tell him we could try the Petit Verdot. The Petit Verdot is a very well-known variety in Bordeaux, but we use it only in blends, so it could help us for our blends. And finally, we planted in 2005, sorry, and 2007 we did our first harvest. I mean, 2 years after in Chile, you start to get some fruit. So we had a small harvest, and immediately we get in love with this grape, with this wine. The Petit Verdot, we planted on alluvional soil in Syrah-Viognier, nearby the winery. So it's just in between the winery and the coastal mountains, so it's granitic soils. So there is stony soils, alluvial soils, and we get the perfect maturity for me. I mean, you will try, or you're trying right now, a ripe Petit Verdot. The blend here is 92% Petit Verdot, so it's almost full Petit Verdot, and 8% Cabernet Sauvignon. And you will try the variety. This variety is amazing because you get the ripe fruit, so the ripe red berries, but in the same time, you have some herbal. You get some herbal, some like
Gary, kind of Mediterranean herb. It's
and at the same time, you will feel some dry fruit, so like overripe fruit. It's very complex from the beginning, from the vinification in terms of flavors. In terms of mouth, we have to take care about the extraction because the tannins of the Petit Verdot are very dry if you don't control that. And of course, to get more complexity in this wine, we make 11 months in barrel, 15% American barrel, because we do 11 months is a short aging. So 15% of new American barrel to get more sucrosity, more volume in the middle of mouth. And then 85% of all barrels to get the length. So that's the specificity of our Petit Verdot. And we are really in love with this variety. We grow from 7 hectares to 15, and now we're still producing our 15 hectares of Petit Verdot in the same terroir.
Excellent. Super. I think you've really, the ripeness of those tannins, it's a really approachable, lovely kind of style of Petit Verdot. Jane says that this is one of their best sellers. It offers fabulous fruit and complexity. So you've definitely done a great job there at showing, how approachable and delicious Petit Verdot can be. Our next wine from the family reserve is a bit more kind of a typical blend, Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. And you said this is back to the pergola. So can you tell us a little bit about this wine?
So there is the Potro de Piedra. Toro de Piedra, it was the stone bull, and there is the stallion, a stone stallion.
Okay. Tell us, because one of Mark's questions that I was going to ask afterwards, but we'll ask now, is can you tell us the story behind Toro de Piedra, and then perhaps you can introduce Potro de Piedra.
Yeah. I will tell you the story of Toro de Piedra because it's a nice story. Yeah? Potro de Piedra, you can see the label. The Toro on the label is a sculpture from Palolo Valdés. Palolo Valdés is a very well-known artist in Chile, and he makes many sculptures of different animals. And in 1999, the founder of the company, Santiago Achura, today 93 years old, still involved in the company, still working. I met him every morning I'm meeting him every morning. That's really really nice. He bought a sculpture of Toro de Piedra from Palolo Valdés. The second generation, his son, who is our president today of the company, decided to talk with Palolo to make a wine brand with Toro de Piedra. Palolo accepted. In 2001, he gave me the responsibility to make the first wine of Toro de Piedra. Well, to make the first wine, to select the first wine of Toro de Piedra, and we began with a Cabernet Sauvignon from Lolol, a vineyard not far away from Thibault, because finally, for me, Colchagua, and especially Lolol, is probably the best place in Chile to produce nice and elegant red wines, especially Cabernet Sauvignon, Carmener, and of course Syrah.
Excellent. And so tell us how Potro de Piedra emerges.
And Potro de Piedra is the same story. 1999, the founder bought the sculpture of Potro de Piedra, the stallion, in the stone stallion. And in 2004, we began Potro de Piedra brand, but without the sculpture on the label, to get a cleaner label. And
this
this
is
Potro de
just
Piedra, and this
no, please
Potro de
carry on.
Piedra, it was called before San Simon. From 2001 and 2003, we were selling this wine as a San Simon, but in 2004 we decided to switch to Potro de Piedra because we changed the concept of the wine. The wine come from only one block, the oldest block planted by Santiago Achura in Sagrada Familia, in the original vineyard, is a block, but they made, when they planted the vineyard, the block, they did a mistake at the nursery. They mixed Cabernet Sauvignon, because Santiago, grandfather, went to plant Cabernet Sauvignon. They mix it with Cabernet Franc. So when I arrived to Viña Requingua, it was really easy at the moment of the harvest to see the difference between, well, we get two varieties in the same block. So we had evidence that was Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon. So between 2001 and 2004, we were selecting first the plant of Cabernet Franc, so picking first the Cabernet Franc at the fresh fruit maturity, so that's more or less 2 weeks in advance from the Cabernet Sauvignon, and then the Cabernet Sauvignon. It was a lot of work. And in 2004, I decided, because I probably was a little bit lazy that day, I decided to pick the same day both variety, but of course focused in the maturity or the ripeness of the Cabernet Sauvignon. So from 2004 is a co-fermentation of Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. And definitely that makes the difference. I mean, in this wine, you will get a complexity. You will get the complexity because of the freshness of the Cabernet Sauvignon with the red fruits, with the licorice, with a hint of some vegetal character. Of course, after the aging, that's going to be oxidized, and the overripe taste or flavors coming from the Cabernet Franc, like some hint of dry fruits, like figs or jammy in mouth. That's coming from the Cabernet Franc. But the most important is the ripeness of the Cabernet Franc that brings to the mouth the freshness, because in the 2019 vintage, it was a cool vintage. Thibault was talking about 2020. I agree with him. 2020 it was a very warm vintage and a small one with a low yield. But 2019 was a cool vintage, so we delayed our harvest, and we get really nice, fresh, very nice natural acidity in all the wine from 2019. And in this wine, so we in mouth the freshness first. The wine is massive. Is a block in the mid palate. You feel the tannicity. You feel the volume. A lot of textures there, and end of mouth we have a longness and high complexity. I mean, you feel a lot of flavors in the end of palate.
Absolutely.
For me, is my favorite wine by far, and we have more wine up to Potro de Piedra, but for me is probably our best wine because it's a real identity of our company.
And I think right now, 2019 is showing really nicely. It's at this perfect kind of time of showing a bit of evolution, but also still plenty of that kind of primary fruit coming through as well. Rachel asks, how long has this wine spent in oak?
Okay, we make it traditionally, so it's a traditional Bordeaux vinification, very simple. We destem all the grapes. After that is between 3 and 4 weeks maceration. And after the 2019, been aged 20 months in French oak barrel, 15% new oak and 15% 1 year old. It's very
Excellent.
simple
And then
recipe.
And I have a question from Tracy. You know, all of your wines are certified sustainable. Is there any, do you think that has any impact on the final style or character of the wines?
I think we don't have impact from the in term of character of our wine, but in term of company focus, that's a real impact. I mean, we are really taking care about everything around how we are process our wines today, and not only of course the environment, but the people. We are more inclusive from because we open our minds definitely. So effectively, the sustainability certification has been a really nice impact in the winery, in the company.
Excellent. And I know that we're coming to the end, but one final question, and perhaps for this last wine, the Potro de Piedra, your favorite wine, the Cabernet Sauvignon-Cabernet Franc blend, what would be your ideal food pairing? Perhaps you can give us one from France and one from Chile.
That's interesting. From France. I'm coming from the southwest of France. With a good Magret, rosé, with a nice French fries is perfect. And from Chile, we have a nice plate called plateada. Is a cow meat cooked in oven. Is like a flat iron, but with some fat, and we cook it at the oven with for a long time, and that's much. This is much is very well too.
Excellent. Well, I think you've definitely made me very hungry, and after these 6 wines, I'm sure that everyone's got quite an appetite now, and lots of nice ideas for what to kind of pair these wines with. Thank you everyone for joining. Aaron, I don't know if you're coming in for a final closing comment, but thank you, Benoit, for showing us a bit about your kind of terroir, your story. You know, half Chilean, half French at this stage. The same with Thibault. I know that we all identify as kind of partly South American and partly European too, and it's a real pleasure to always to work in South America. And I think these wines show, you know, what a generous terroir we have in Chile for making such delicious wines. So thank you both for your time, and thank you everyone for the questions, and for those who are kind of watching on replay. It's always great to know what you've thought of the wines. If you do want to kind of comment on social media at a later date, it would be lovely to know everyone's feedback.
Wow. Amanda, what can I say? Thanks again. And thanks to Benoit and to Thibault, our winemakers today. Really fascinating tasting as always, and food matching as well. Bonus content. Thanks everyone who joined us, and thanks for the really excellent questions. I'm sure, and thanks for our winemakers for not getting too rattled. You know, I think I saw some terror in eyes at times, but it wasn't too bad. There was still some good questions and some good answers given. A bit of business, some housekeeping at the end there. Everyone who's joined today, just to let you know, we'll do a follow-up email just thanking you. But attached to that email, there is going to be a 10% off voucher. Any of the wines that were featured in today's tasting, if you purchase them before the end of the month, you can enjoy 10% off those on your orders. But there's one caveat. I'm really sorry, Benoit, but the Toro de Piedra Chardonnay is a coming soon wine. We don't have that in the UK yet, so that's one we'll have to hold on to. But I'm sure that when it does finally land, we will do some kind of promotion around it. Sorry, Lee, if that's not what you intended, but now the cat's out the bag. And then the other thing I just wanted to say was join us as well for our next tasting, which is the 25th of September. The title for that one is still being formulated, but I can tell you there's going to be some fantastic wines from Argentina and Chile featuring in that one as well. And all that remains to say, Amanda, thank you again so much for excellent hosting skills today and for holding everything together. A really lovely tasting. And again, to our winemakers, Benoit and Thibault, thanks for giving us some of your time. I know you're both very busy guys with lots of responsibility, but our audience and certainly us at Condor really appreciate it. So thanks for that. And have a lovely afternoon, everyone, and we'll see you at the next one.